It's evolution, baby. The eternal never-ending cycle of eat or be eaten. Survival of the fittest. And then that cock named Christ throws a curveball and creates a koala bear. Where the hell is he going with this, and how does it connect to the actual video, you ask? And I shall answer. Throughout TF2's lifespan, the meta has constantly evolved and changed, from the standard stock set to one focused on superior stats. Of course, for every awesome apex predator, there's an awful amalgamation of absurdity. Asking the question of, what's the worst loadout for each year? 2007, the start of something splendid. Or I suppose super stupid. Someone has to have the suckiest stock set, and not shockingly, it's Medic. Medic at launch was an excruciating experience to try and enjoy. The several mechanics that exist nowadays, such as critical healing, pre-round uber building, and sharing speed, weren't around, meaning Medic was even more passive in the past than he is now. Medic at the time was the least played class, and the first update was made to specifically make him more appealing. Although that, unfortunately, came out in 2008, not 2007. Even ignoring the lack of intricate and interesting interactions, Medic's stock loadout is one of the worst ones in the game even today. Ignoring the power of the Crusader's crossbow, the stock Syringe gun is outclassed completely by both the Overdose and Blutsauger in just every—
Actually, the Overdose is a less offensive Syringe gun since it deals 25% less damage.
Okay, the damage penalty is literally 1. Mini crits have it to 2, and crits have it for 4. 4 damage lost randomly for extra mobility and survivability. Heaven forbid, I haven't seen a deal this good since the Art of the Deal. As for the Blutsauger, it may struggle as a defensive weapon due to its health regen penalty, but being able to use leech life on the offense or in direct combat does a lot more to keep you alive compared to stock. Then we have the Bonesaw. Also one of the worst stock melee weapons in the game, especially when compared to the sheer power creep that came next year with the Uber Saw being introduced. The saving grace of the set is the stock Medigun, of course. The thing that peels on the healer is the most helpful. Medic's stock set may be the weakest at the start, but we'll soon see some real shit set soon. 2008 saw the introduction of the first Medic, Pyro, and Heavy update, all adding some staple meta-defining weapons to each class, such as the Sandwich, Flare Gun, and of course the Uber Saw. Pyro also saw some massive changes, being granted the signature Air Blast. But not good enough. Although Pyro may have received the ability to attack people by sending them into the atmosphere, it was only applied to the stock Flamethrower. The Backburner didn't have that. But it did have a design that's confusing as MC Escher's paintings. What the fuck? The Backburner is supposed to burn back, shocking news I know, but it initially allowed Pyro's health to go from 175 to 225, meaning it was meant for more aggressive frontal pushes. They realized the issue of giving a weapon that rewards flanking a massive health bonus and removed it, meaning it only could deal crits on back hits. No air blast to help with soldiers, demos, or people who got too close to comfort. You would ambush somebody, get a bit of crit damage in, only to have them immediately turn around and make you the ex-president of the Being Alive Club. Imagine using the Backburner nowadays, but instead of periodically air blasting projectiles when they're coming your way or extinguishing teammates, you've unbound M2. Mentally, I can't even do that. The Flare Gun is famously known for finishing off inflamed foes or fighting them from afar. It deals a solid 30 damage and crits on people already on fire for 90. You can fire 2 back-to-back to kill any lightweight classes, or combo into it with your flamethrower to deliver a flare punch. You are dead! The current flare gun is like Homo sapiens. This master fired and is on its way to regret that decision.
And the flame is rising to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast of the humanity.
But the flare gun when first introduced was more like Australopithecus. Instead of 30 damage, it was 20. A bit harsh, but at least you could string together combos with it to maximize its damage output. Right? Wrong, because the flare gun didn't have crits on burning players, and as a result you had this long-range tool that only really annoyed people rather than attacked them, which was outclassed by the stock shotgun and medium to close range encounters as well. As for melee options, you have the Extinguisher, which hit as hard as my dad did, dealing full crits to burning players, and the stock Axe, which could deal random crits, I guess. Pyro didn't really become a power player in TF2 till the proper preparation were met, primarily the degreaser and eventual flare gun buff. Air Blast was a good attempt to make Pyro less pathetic against projectiles, but having another flamethrower that tries to capitalize on Pyro's strength while making him weaker doesn't work. This methodology is really strange when you look at the other weapons added that year. A common complaint regarding Medic was that he was too passive, and as a result he was given a Syringe gun that fries in a fight, a Medigun that shreds through the entire enemy team, and a melee that rewards risky hits with increased uber. Heavy's complaints were that without a medic his survivability was too low, and as such they gave him the sandwich. Pyro was a flanking class who struggled in long range fights and head-on attacks. The flare gun attempts to fix the distant issue, and Air Blast a head-on problem, but the back burner just further enforces the need to flank and actively ignores the initial issue. I'm aware I'm picking on the back burner rather than the entire loadout, but don't worry, there will be worse. What's better than having one class in an update? Having two classes in an update. And a classless update too, I guess. And of course, these weapons were all borderline broken rather than being bad. The Equalizer, the Eyelander, the Drawdy, the Dead Ringer, and the Sandman before it was brutally butchered beyond recognition. But with the good comes the bad. Bonk, the Stock Bat, and the Force of Nature. These three items have gone virtually unchanged since the releases, so I can truthfully say they suck more ass than a Chinese red light district. To give it some credit, the loadout tries to maximize Scout's mobility and flanking capabilities. Bonk is useful for running away from the enemy, and the Fan delivers a 1-2 combo when close enough, with the Stock Bat being useful if you miss said combo. This loadout does in fact work to a certain degree, just the same degree as a blind guy works. You're gonna stumble around, you'll only be able to do stuff right in front of you, and you're gonna hear all the insults people call you when you run away using Bonk. Compare this to using the stock scattergun, which doesn't punish you for missing, nor punishes you for hitting, as the Fan does, in addition to not having its range limited to being 3 feet. Bonk may work defensively as a get out of jail card, but offensively it falls off hard as people are very prone to chase down the scout they just saw dart across the desert. The stock bat is alright nowadays, but back in the glory days, one ball bat ruled the Sandlot, being the Sandman. When it was first added, the sheer stunning special came at a steep cost of striking away Scout's second jump. Sounds pretty severe, but it should be noted that the Sandman could stun Ubered players. I'm gonna let that thought sink in. Thankfully, Valve looked up the word invincible, however, and changed it around in the classless update. Scout had his double jump back, but only 95 HP, an extremely on-the-nose way to make it fair against Demo. Despite this, the Sandman still stood tall against stock. Definitely not the worst loadout on this list, but there's still loads of years and weapons to go through. 2010 was more packed than a Romanian orphanage in terms of content. The two most game-changing updates that happened during that year were the Manconomy update and the Australian Christmas update, adding not just TF2's trading system, crates, keys, and more, but also an insane amount of weapons. Among these items and sets came the Rocket Jumper, a practical tool for practicing pogos and perfecting a person's gameplay. The Rocket Jumper is obviously a bad weapon choice, it's more of a tool than a weapon anyways. Similarly, the Buff Banner is a tool that boosts and supports you and your fellow friends' offensive firepower. Oh wait, it was added back in the War update and has only seen a few number of tweaks here and there. It's known today as being the only banner that doesn't provide a passive effect, meaning the only benefit be given is the blunt bludgeoning done by your shovel. This loadout even ranks today as being absolutely useless, but at least you could swap out the buff banner with something like the Conch today for its passive health regen, and the Market Gardener to create a somewhat viable Trolldier set. But back in 2010, the Rocket Jumper simply wasn't a gimmicky troll loadout slot. It was there to solely teach people how to rocket jump, hence the name. Sure, you could arguably jump around and swap to your shotgun while soaring through the sky, shooting and striking down scouts and snipers safely, but the Market Gardener, the one weapon all Trolldiers worship, wasn't added until the Uber update back in 2011. As a result, you have what is essentially a tutorial weapon, a useless backpack, and the only saving grace being a shovel you can dig your own grave with. TF2 goes free to play and with a bunch of fresh faces, all fathered due to how bad they are at the game. Also, a bunch of bad weapons. I dare to say that 2011 added not just some of the worst weapons in the game, but the most of them as well. You got the Bison, the Thompson, the Man Melter all coming out together in one update, along with the Enforcer, Eviction Notice, Persian Persuader, Short Circuit, Phantom War, and the Man Treads with some other currently crap weapons that couldn't make the cut like the Liberty Launcher, Reserve Shooter, and Atomizer. To top that tower of trash are the two most tragic team-ups to touch the game, the Sharpened Volcano Fragment, and the Sun on a Stick. Yeah, sure, 2011 may have been the death of Osama bin Laden, but at what cost? Engineer's loadout consisting of the Thompson, Eureka Effect, and Short Circuit not only makes one of the worst loadouts, but also one of the most complex ones. To those who think this loadout is trash nowadays, you have absolutely no idea how bad it was when all these items were first added. The Thompson, shockingly enough, hasn't changed all that much in terms of its viability, but it was surprisingly stronger in the past than it is now. Originally, it was able to pierce through multiple enemies rather than stopping at one, allowing for multiple hits against the same target. Its signature ability to drain Uber and Cloak was also a flat number rather than being affected by fall off like it is now. If you snipe a spy, you'll sap away a significantly smaller section of Cloak if they were standing beside you. And then there's the super slow projectile, lower clip, 20% less damage to buildings, 28% slower firing speed, a horrendous and horrid amount of hidden stats, but what can you expect from the weapon that spelt Medigun wrong? The Short Circuit is a clear-cut weapon choice to cut off cocky Crockets from crashing down on your sentry. Right-clicking fires a ball that destroys projectiles, and left-clicking fires... I'm not sure. Is it a taser? That's what it looks like. The weapon certainly struggles with feedback in telling you what it is, that's for sure. But back when it was first added, it was a hell of a lot worse. In today's time, you have this nice giant orb that tells you what projectiles will be destroyed, and the left-click actually has a particle telling you its range. The original Short Circuit had none of that. When you left-clicked, and only left-clicked, there were no Kamehamehas here, a short-ranged wall will be placed in front of you, destroying any projectiles and damaging any enemies, taking up to 35 metal per click. It hasn't changed too much, but having a range of 3 feet to a range of 9 feet is a massive difference. The Eureka Effect has the claim to fame as being the most forgettable weapon in the game. Even the Southern Hospitality gets more love and recognition than this thing. Probably because there's no strange version of it. The gimmick of being able to teleport to an exit or spawn freely sounds stupid at first, but it opens up a whole new door of engineer possibilities. But holy moly, cheese stromboli, the Eureka Effect was easily the worst weapon in the game for a handful of years. There was literally zero reason to ever use this weapon, and this isn't a case of, this weapon is just outclassed, like the Liberty Launcher or something. God, no. The Eureka Effect actively punished you for using it. Fun little TF2 trivia fact. Engineer couldn't originally pick up his buildings until the 2010 Engineer update. The Eureka Effect thought it was a swell idea to remove this essential skill that is impossible to play without, with the only positive being able to teleport back to spawn. Just spawn. You cannot teleport back to your exit like the current Eureka Effect. This is such a horrendous and painfully annoying idea to even imagine that I watched Kevin Hart just to focus on something that annoys me even fucking more. 2012 started mighty in terms of content. It may have mitigated and had minimal minor patches, but it miraculously managed to make the massive man vs machine game mode. MVM brought into question the balance of the game for both PvE and PvP game modes, resulting in a lot of weapons being buffed and nerfed, opening the doors to a whole new world of waste. And look who waltzed right in, it's the Bizarre Bargain. That's bizarre. Isn't the Bizarre Bargain one of the strongest sniper rifles in the game? Currently, yes, and that's thanks to its rewarding headshots to allow you to get more headshots faster, resulting in a nice snowball effect. The old Bizarre Bargain, however, was more of a gamble weapon that rewarded you similarly for hitting heads, but properly punished you if you aimed poorly, as missing a shot would deduct the head, lowering your overall charge speed bonus. The current Bizarre Bargain has a negative base rate of 50%, meaning it takes 6.3 seconds to fully charge it. Conversely, the old Bizarre Bargain had a slightly faster base charge rate of negative 40%. On paper, this old Bizarre Bargain sounds like a bargain. As long as you're constantly hitting headshots, you can't be punished and reap all the rewards. But what happens when some sneaky spy sneaks on over or a scout starts sprinting straight for you? Well, you could pull out your SMG to ensure you can't lose heads trying to hit a target, but shucks, the title says we're going for the worst, and the worst was the Razorback. I'm still not a big fan of this weapon in terms of both using it and fighting against it. It doesn't actually make you immune to spies, as people scream and cry about. It just ensures they have to start shooting you over stabbing you. Something that can be stupidly hard to do if the sniper likes being around his teammates. Of course, no SMG means no safe short-range survivability. Either hit the quickscope or lose your head. Sniper's melees essentially boil down to I am using Girardi and I am not using Girardi. But to make this loadout even more excruciating, the Traum and Shiv dooms even our melee range survivability, giving spies splinters rather than scaring them off, meaning we have to sacrifice a head, either a quickscope or a body shot, just to be able to finish them off. Enlisting extremely extravagant loot, 2013 saw the emergence of Australians with the Two Cities update, and the exiting of the item set bonuses introduced years before. Although no new weapons were added, a lot of them were tweaked, nerfed, buffed, and given an excessive amount of reskins. Among these tweaked trash weapons was the infamous Brawler Heavy subclass set. Sure, some situational sets were worse or so shit they seem to make you suffer and scream, but I've developed an impromptu rule of not repeating loadouts, so here we are with the worst subclass in the game. The Buffalo Steak Sandwich limits Heavy to only using as melee, making him run slightly faster and granting him mini crits. Of course, this speed is so insignificant and the damage laughable, and for some reason it makes Heavy take even more damage while under its effects. But what if we made it even worse by equipping the eviction notice? Now that damage boost is hitting for 35, and you're still running extremely slow since the health drain speed boost the eviction notice and Gru have was added during Jungle Inferno update. As for the primary weapon, what clashes with a slightly immobile melee madman did a minigun made of metal? The brass beast didn't have its bug damage resistance bonus, meaning it was only meant for massacring and moving 1 mile a month. If you bring your fist to a gunfight, you certainly won't have the time to rev the thing to fight back, but sitting still with it revved means taking chip damage you can't move or heal from either. It's an admittedly boring loadout that's focused on punishing the one benefit the Boxer Heavy subclass could have, being a mobile minigun, replacing it with a stationary Gatling gun. 2014 is widely regarded being TF2's best and biggest year for updates, featuring the first ever full-on community update being End of the Line, the massive Love and War update, even the Scream Fortress update was a game changer, inventing Rocket League of all things. Among the many munitions was an extremely mediocre multi-class secondary known as the Base Jumper, which is only really useful with the Airstrike and Baby's First Market Gardener. Arguably, you could use it to nullify fall damage, maximizing your HP after a rocket jump, but what if your primary didn't even do damage? Of course, we're talking about reusing the rocket jumper with the base jumper, but instead of maximizing any potential you could have with market gardens, you're using the escape plan. You're taking full-on mini-crit damage for mobility that you already have access to. Even worse, however, was the fact that the old escape plan made it so you couldn't receive any healing from medics, dispensers, or the payload cart by just having it equipped. Makes sense considering the American healthcare system. Following the most eventful year for updates was the most confusing. You had the gunmetal update, which added a whole slew of balance changes, not just to weapons, but to the core classes themselves. And then everyone hated the changes made, causing them to be changed yet again, only 5 months later with the Tough Break update. Despite that, Demo deserves a dishonorable mention here, having an extremely dirty and disrespected loadout. The Quickie Bomb Launcher was a sticky bomb launcher that focused on spamming enemies out by dealing high amounts of chip damage in a short amount of time. Only issue is that to deal that damage you had to detonate your stickies within 4 seconds of firing them, or they would fizz out. But to maximize your damage you had to charge your stickies, meaning you could only ever fire one out full damage before the other fizzles out. They didn't think that through. Combine this with the Persian Persuader, a weapon that removes 80% of your ammo only to reward you with shield charge, and the Base Jumper, soaring you into the sky requiring you to charge the sticky even more just so you could hit somebody, only to hit them once with your air stickies fizzing out 4 seconds later, and you have a truly terrible toss-up even today. Plainly stated that 2016 sorta sucked for TF2 and marked its eventual decline and neglect from Valve that continues to this day. All thanks to one single update which shakes and scares people to this very day. Meet your match. A lot of the pretty poor equipment from the past still persists here, but there's one class that hasn't been preached about yet: Spy. Spy doesn't suffer from the same situations someone else like Sniper or Soldier does, as a Spy's ability to do well is less about his loadout choice and more about how he sneaks around the enemy team. A weapon that reduces your health isn't that severe since you'll be dead if they even look at you, but there are still some weapons that seem to make Spy suffer, such as the Enforcer. Obviously, it's one of the worst revolvers for Spy since it functions more like a one-use weapon, gaining full benefits while disguised and punishing you if you aren't. Even the ability to phase through damage resistance is useless, not just because the most common examples of it don't block melee damage, the thing Spy is known for, but because it's infested with more bugs than a New York apartment. But what happens if we equip a knife that forces us into situations that need some aggressive diplomacy? The Spicicle is my least used knife, even more so than the Ur. The benefits of being immune to a Pyro for a few seconds pale in comparison to the amount of time wasted waiting for it to come back. In a usual situation, you could always pull out your pistol, popping the person's peepers out, but not with the Enforcer. As for Invis watches, we'll just say the Cloak and Dagger, mainly because it's always funny perching above the dispenser only to have a Pyro move your knife away and your dreams of success. All the watches are pretty good in their own unique way, and none of them really fit the bill of being too bad. As for the Sapper, you already know what it is. Video's already like, what, 22, 24 minutes long? It shouldn't be hard to explain how the one weapon which has consistently been a downgrade is still bad. The red tape recorder sucks, alright? Slows down speed, but reverses it. Useless. Who cares? I don't even want to hear the comments go on about that one time it's useful against an engineer with a gunslinger with a lot of revenge crits because he has a Frontier Justice so you can install it. That's not a good use for the weapon. I could very easily argue that a normal Sapper with a Diamondback is much more effective at taking care of not just the sentry, but the engineer as well compared to the red tape recorder. It sucks so bad that this entire tangent here about it is unscripted, and I'm going off the top of my head on why it's such a horrible, horrible weapon. And here we are at the end. But what about 2017 and beyond? Listen, pal, we're already living and playing in that time. No need to tell you what the worst loadout of the present is when the video is about the past. Instead, you can go comment it down below and explain why you believe that is the worst loadout you can have in the game. You can watch the What's video on it right there. I don't know if this is linked or not, but it's there. Or, just figure it out. Play the game for yourself and figure it out. If you enjoyed this little one-off video, but, we're all expecting some big tier list videos soon. Don't worry. It's coming up, sooner or later. Much later, I'm gonna be honest.